Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Elevate Your Soul podcast. Today, I have a very interesting and insightful interview for you guys that I've done with Libby Wallace, all about addictions. Libby Wallace is a leader and wealth coach for conscious entrepreneurs. She has a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. She is an addiction expert and co-founder and host of the Self Wealth Project. Libby and I are going to dive into why people get addicted to things in the first place. How do you know if someone or if you yourself has an addiction? Is there such thing as a healthy addiction, and how to overcome addictions, and so many more other different topics that we kind of veered off into. But overall, this interview is so interesting, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. You can find some of Libby's work and what she's up to on the show notes. I will put in some links over there. And if you guys have any questions or comments or want to get in touch with Libby or I, please don't be afraid to get in touch with us. I'm sure both of us will love it if you reach out and contact us. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Hello, Libby. Welcome to the Elevate Your Soul podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Rao. I am so awesome. How are you?
Good. I'm great. First question of the day is, what elevates your soul?
Oh, that's an awesome question. And how long do we have?
Go for it.
What elevates my soul? Do you know what? Like, my life is based on passion. And if I'm doing something that I'm not super passionate about, I literally remove it from my life, because I'm like, there's no point in doing things. Well, obviously there's little things.
Yeah.
But for me, like, so what I like, my work is literally my biggest passion in my life. And people are probably like, what? How is that even possible? But for me, like, helping people really step into their soul potential, like seeing it, what they're truly capable of, aligning with their, what they came into this world to do. Like seeing people realize that they're not just human, they're spirit in human form. Like the light bulb moments, like, oh my God, I've had so many of those recently where I'm working with people and they just go, oh my gosh, I can do anything I want. Like seeing that click within people, like that is like just one tiny thing that elevates my soul. Like it's just people realizing that there is so much more to life. And for me, like I've always been a big goal setter. Like I've always had somewhere where I want to go, and then I've done everything I can to go after that thing. And that as well, like that always has helped drive me. But the past couple of years, like I've just been through massive personal transformations. Like I've given up drinking, I've gone vegetarian, or like pretty much plant-based. I won't say vegan because there's, but pretty much plant-based. Sober living, like plant-based living, into spirituality, meditation. And 10 years ago, I would have spat my drink out if you'd told me that that's what I would be up to in 10 years time. But the direction that I've always had in life is always like, I've seen something and I've gone after it. And that truly, like realizing that we are capable of anything, like that is what makes me just like so pumped, so excited. And I've always been like that. But just these past couple of years when I've really adopted like such a spiritual approach to life and really realized that whatever I have my vision or whatever I have my heart set on is for a specific reason. Like that vision has been given to me, and seeing that come into fruition, like, this past year, it's been growing a business at a phenomenal rate just because I can see it so clearly. And I could honestly go on for ages, but it's literally like,
that's so great. So
in a nutshell.
So what elevates your soul is what you're doing pretty much every day, and you're using that passion as well to earn your own income.
It's like in a nutshell. You summed it up even better. That's the goal. That's honestly like it's this best life living that I don't really like that term, but you know, you hear it all the time. It's like actually embodying that every single day. Yeah.
I love that. So to tell us and the listeners a bit about yourself and your story, and you know why you're coming on here to discuss addictions and things like that. Can you tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah. So I guess starting like, long story short, because I could honestly talk about this for hours. Past couple of years, so I've given up drinking. That's been the main catalyst for turning my life around. So, you know, backtrack 3.5 years ago, I was alcoholic, I was bulimic, I was in thousands and thousands of dollars of like personal loan debt, credit card debt, etc. I just didn't have a good relationship with money at all. I'd moved back home to my parents' house because I'd had another breakup because of my drinking.
Yeah.
But I never before that, I never knew I had any sort of problem. I honestly thought I just liked to party. I thought I just loved food. I thought I was traveling. I was a travel agent at the time, and I did really well in my career. I was what they call like a high functioning alcoholic. So I thought I purely just loved to party, and I could back it up by going to work on 2 hours sleep and, selling dream holidays and leading a team. And, like there's just that was my life. And on the surface, it looked awesome. People going, oh, you're living the dream life. You're living overseas and traveling all the time. And, you've got a good career, and I'm doing quotation marks, good career. And don't get me wrong, it was awesome at the time. It served its purpose. It was, met my need. And before that, I'd studied psychology, and at school I'd always been like a prefect and in leadership roles, and right throughout my career I was always in leadership and management roles. So I never honestly knew that there was anything wrong with my life, because I thought that all there was to life was leave school, go study, do your OE, get a good job, get a good husband or wife, get that route. And never ever lit me on fire. Never. I remember having a conversation about 7 years ago with my mum, and she was saying, oh, you can't keep this travel lifestyle up when when you've got obligations, and it's not realistic to always be traveling. And I remember in that moment going, no, sorry, I'm not buying that. No, not for me.
Yeah.
So I've always, the reason I'm explaining all of this is because I think when people hear the word bulimic, alcoholic, in heaps of debt, they automatically think homeless, scruffy as, that really, really dark times, which I have been homeless before as well. I've had a roof to sleep on. I haven't slept on the streets, but yes, I have been homeless. And I just paint that picture because so many people are struggling with addictions, and this is what I work a lot with as well. But on the surface, everything looks totally fine. And so, just going back there, and so 3.5 years ago, it was the beginning of 2016. I had met a new man. I'd been dating him for a while, and I went to his house one night, and I was really, really drunk. We had a massive argument, and I tried to end my life that night. I jumped out of a window onto concrete. It was on the second floor. Wow. I honestly have no idea how I survived. I know now that it just was not at the time. Oh yeah, I was wasted. Wow. But that wasn't the first time that I tried anything like that or spoken of anything like that when I had been drunk. They say the truth comes out when you're drunk, and when I was sober, I would say, well, no, because when I'm drunk, I do all of these awful things and I don't mean them. But what I know now is that deep down, I actually did. Deep down, I did mean those things. Exactly. Because I was and there was.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point. Because so many people use alcohol as an excuse, oh, well, I was drunk. But it's that still, those behaviors still came from somewhere inside of you.
Yeah, exactly. There was something driving that. And even I know you don't drink, Arel, and that's it just shows you that you can actually live a fucking amazing life. So excuse my language. We
Yeah.
like to swear in here. Fucking amazing life without anything. And this is my message now. So just going back to that, where I'd attempted to end my life when I'd been wasted. The guy that I'd met, I think we'd just moved in together. I just got back from a big 3-month trip around Asia, and we just moved in together. And his father was an alcoholic, the guy I'd been dating, and actually died from liver failure.
Wow.
And in that moment where he called the police, he called the ambulance, and then he called my parents, and he broke up with me. He said, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want you in my life. And waking up in hospital, realizing that I was back in the same position, living with my parents, still in debt, still with a massive drinking problem, still with an unhealthy relationship with myself. Like, I was just so miserable.
And
no one would ever know
by
that.
then you knew it was an issue, that your alcohol, because before you said you didn't really know.
Yeah, right. In that moment, it was like this thing that had been under the surface from my last probably 3 relationships that had broken up because of my drinking, and I'd never admitted it. And then for this guy to then, this guy who I was like madly in love with, and to break up with me, I realized, holy crap, I need to do something. And so it was in that moment when someone actually, I think it was a nurse or someone in the hospital, said, what are you going to do? And I literally, it came out before I could even think about it. I was like, I can never drink again. And I was like, holy fuck, like, how can I do that? Like, I'm a party girl, that's who I am, right? It was like my identity, that's who I am. And by the way, so I'm now married to the guy,
oh, beautiful,
my husband. We ended up getting back together, and he decided to give up drinking at the same time.
Great.
And from there, like, I just realized that life is so different than it's ever been, than it's ever made out to be, as we're growing up, as we're children, as society is telling us, buy the clothes that are going to make you look sexy, buy the makeup that is going to make you look prettier, all of these external things that are going to solve your problems. Like, we live in like this drinking, eating culture. And someone with a food and alcohol addiction, it was a blessing and a curse. The alcohol was a blessing because I loved it, and then also the food, that stuff was a curse because I hated having to eat. Like, that was my relationship with food back then as well. So it was just like this toxic cycle of, well, this is what society tells us, but I don't quite know how to navigate that. And so that's where the addictions, like, so many people I see with addictions, but they don't know that there's anything wrong as such. And I don't like using the word wrong, but it's not where they could be, or not where their potential is. And
that was actually my next leading question, was like, how do people know when they're addicted to something? Like, how does someone know that it's an addiction?
And that's an awesome question. It's when there's a reliance on it. Like, to sum it up, to keep it as easy as possible, like, and one that I've just one addiction, actually my final addiction that I've just kicked very recently, was coffee. And the reason I knew I was addicted was because I couldn't go a morning without coffee. And my message that I share with the world is that we don't need anything external to us to feel what we desire, like, to feel truly, and I use the word wealthy. And for me, I was like, well, hang on, I can't go a morning without coffee. And like, that's a very, very light example. But with, if you're going to go deeper, it's, well, is there a problem associated with it? With coffee, no, that was actually, maybe I was too grumpy in the morning or something, I don't know.
but then you can look into it, right? You're like, okay, why do I need it, and how can I feel that way without it?
Exactly.
And I don't drink coffee for the same reason as well. Like, I quit like everything I could already at a really young age. I have no idea. It must have been because I was always interested in like psychology and stuff. And when I heard about addictions, I was like, okay, what are most people in society addicted to? And I was like, okay, cool, sugar, caffeine, alcohol. And I just eliminated all 3 of those. I was just like, I'm not going to become one of these.
A statistic. It's that's really insightful. And I think if you realize that from a young age,
Yep.
It is super helpful. And I, like, for me, the addictions, like what I know now is that all addictions stem from a lack of love somewhere.
Totally.
So for alcohol, like for my alcohol, it was, experiencing a rape, it was experiencing abuse, it was experiencing like lots of violence in my childhood. And what I always thought was me just loving to party was actually just a subconscious cry for help of needing to cope.
Yes.
And the same with food. Like, I thought that yeah, well, it was all the same. It was emotional eating. It was that
Love.
uh, wanting to feel that love, or wanting to feel that dopamine hit,
Yeah.
which we can feel naturally within ourselves. Like when we're in true alignment with our, with who we really are, we can naturally spike the dopamine that we seek. But when there's that wound created from something external to us, we then use something external to try and fill that wound with something. But all we need, and it sounds really cheesy, but all we really need to fill that wound with is a lot of love, like a lot of self-love, a lot of healing. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, and that's like a lot of the work that I do as well, is, in actually healing those subconscious, or those deep, deep, deep wounds that so many of us carry.
And I feel like a lot of that natural dopamine that you were talking about, it also stems from passion. And when we, like, a lot of us don't even know what our passions are, or are not very passionate people, and it's because of that wounding, and it's because of the unhealed trauma. And the more that we have self-love and love for ourselves and other people, I find from there it's much more natural to grow passion for things you love. And not only just the things you're passionate about, you just end up becoming more passionate about everything. And that's your own, taking care of your body. You become more passionate about your relationships. You become more passionate about your work. You become more passionate about eating and driving and walking and everything in life. And then through that, that's where that dopamine and that like high vibration and that energy actually comes from as well. So I feel like it's a bit of both, like that love and passion.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put it. And I always say, like, you look at children, before the age of about 4, where they start really adopting the world around them as their own beliefs.
Yeah.
Child about 1, 2, 3 years old, probably around 2, 3, where they actually have, like, you can see their personality.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a sad or you've never seen a depressed child. Like I haven't.
Yeah.
And that passion that so naturally comes to children
Yes.
is what so naturally comes to us as adults when we're in true alignment, and when we're completely whole and at peace with who we are.
Yes.
And I always say, like, I always call it dating yourself.
Yeah.
So like any recovery process, or I actually prefer the term discovery process, because recovery, you're wanting to go back to the person who you were before any addiction took hold.
Yeah.
Well, for me, because I've always had addictions from a very young age, I actually am discovering who I am. So
Right.
so I like to take that approach as well. And dating yourself, and what lights you up, what are you passionate about, what do you like doing with yourself, like being able to date yourself and actually spend quality time getting to know yourself is, I reckon, like one of the best gifts that we can give ourselves.
For sure. For sure. I love what
Mm.
you said about the kids as well. And what I think as well, like, because kids aren't depressed or, like feeling down all the time, and just they naturally have that natural like spark and energy and drive,
Mm.
is also because they're 100% vulnerable. Like, they haven't learned how to, protect their heart and do all these, defense mechanisms. And
Mm.
they're also just truly just authentic and in the present moment. And the
Yeah.
older we get in our culture, we're less just like conditioned to no longer be present, because that, it's easier to deal with the pain if you're not in the present moment. So we focus on the future, or we're, stuck in the past. And we have all these layers and all these facades that we put on ourselves. And that's really tiring. Like, if you're doing that from the age of, say, 5, or from when you were a childhood throughout your entire adulthood, when you go out in public and when you're around other people and when you're at work, when you're wearing this facade, it wears you down eventually. And like, even just that itself is going to, you know, make you more susceptible to getting an addiction, because, you know, you're not having that natural passion. You're not having that authenticity to just express and be yourself. You know, you're covering up. And I think, you know, with time, that's also really detrimental to people's health, both physically and mentally and spiritually.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it as well. It's like, you know, as a child being told, you know, or don't cry, or, oh, you're okay, or, oh, just get back up, just get, you know, that didn't hurt. You know, these things. And I look at my sister now, who's got a 1-year-old, and I just love watching her, you know, learning to become a parent, or she is already a parent, but, you know, asking, oh, did you hurt yourself, or did you get a fright, or, you know, little things like actually listening to her child's needs. And I think you know, I don't have children of my own yet, but I think a lot of people are starting to realize the detrimental effects of, you know, telling a child to harden up, or telling a child to don't cry, or be quiet, or, you know, don't speak, you know, it's not your turn to speak just yet. And that's for me, that's exactly where my addiction developed, because I didn't have a voice for the pain that I was experiencing, and the person that I was wanting to express my pain to was the person giving me the pain. So, you know, and that's a whole other cycle, that,
which is why we get into these toxic relationships. It's like, you're giving me the pain, but I want you to understand.
I want love.
I want love from you, even though you're the one that's hurting me.
Yeah, exactly. It's and it's, you know, my husband and I have done a lot of work on like our sexual relationship, because of my unhealthy relationship with that love hate, or that love pain wiring that was instilled in me from such a young age. And all of my relationships up until, you know, this beautiful man that I'm so incredibly, I feel so incredibly lucky and fortunate to even have met him and have him in my life. But up until then, like, it's like he's been such a massive part of teaching me what a healthy relationship actually is. And we both learn from what a healthy relationship is not. You know, we both experience very toxic relationships. You talk about, like, you know, domestic abuse, and he was on the receiving end of domestic abuse in his past relationship. And even from me, when I was drunk early on, I'm sure I verbally abused him a lot. So yeah, it's like realizing that actually everything that we have gone through in life can become our strength. And we work really hard, and I work super hard every single day on making sure that I am breaking any ancestral patterns or cycles. And I actually had a conversation with my paternal grandfather and my maternal grandmother this week, and both of them, independently of each other, I was asking them about, you know, their relationships, and the relationships and the foundation that they set as examples for my parents was what we would call toxic. And they both said to me, like, you and Dane, it's my husband, you and Dane, I think you've broken the mold, or broken the cycle and the pattern. And to hear that from them was like, oh my God, it was hard not to cry. Not that crying's even a bad thing, so it didn't even matter if I cried.
That's so important, though. That's so important to break those chains. I think so many of us have, you know, those types of relationships with our parents. It's a bit of that love pain, and it's just that's how they were parented from their parents, and then it just goes back. You know, it's just
and so I think it's really important to never, because like as we're going through any healing journey, you know, we're addressing, okay, well, where does the pain come from? And often people get so angry or blame their parents for particular things. And I think it's so important that while, yes, sometimes the emotion has to come up in order to be released from the body, but then it's very important to then forgive, and to realize that I'm sure your parents never intended to harm you. Like, you know, extreme cases perhaps, but the majority, you know, the more that we can forgive and realize that they were just doing the best that they could, and being almost grateful for having those experiences so that you can, I always say it, like, experience the depth and the range of human emotion or human experiences, and having the strength to face it, to heal it, to break the pattern, and to become a better person. Like, and the, you know, the ripple effect of that around the world is absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, I think gratitude and forgiveness are massive, 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 like, massive tools that I use daily as well. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Definitely ask yourself, yeah, what were your parents' intentions? Like, was it your mother and your father's real intention to make you, you know, grow up and get in all these toxic relationships? Or were they really just trying to, like, teach you the best that they knew? And maybe they were struggling at the time, and, you know, and they had their own issues that they hadn't dealt with yet. And so, you know, that's, they put that onto you, and, you know, it's not fully their fault. And even if sometimes it might have been their intention, it's like, they're hurt people. So they're only hurting you because they're in pain, and they haven't, you know, elevated or evolved their soul, and they haven't gone through their trauma. And yeah, they're stuck in their own negative patterns. So yeah, it's so important to forgive. And
So
with
important.
anyone, not even parents, just like with ex-partners and ex-best friends, and, you know, old work colleagues and all that stuff, you know, the guy who fired you, and
everyone, like, everyone. And I think it's important, because anything that we hold on to toxic, whether it's you know, an emotion, like something physical, it's literally like, it's not affecting them. It's not affecting them at all. It's purely only affecting us. So the more we can just have that compassion and just go, do you know what, like, at the end of the day, I'm actually okay.
yeah,
You know, even if I'm not feeling okay, even if I'm feeling far from okay, I know I will be okay. And, you know, it's not actually doing anyone any favors by keeping that anger, or still retaining you know, aggression, or, you know, or negative viewpoints on anything else. So yeah, it's massive. I can't remember how we got onto that conversation, but it was cool.
sorry. So why is it that people get addicted? Like, you kind of touched on this before, but yeah, why do people get addicted to things in the first place?
It's a coping mechanism, a coping tool. And, like, it's that, you know, all addictions stemming from a lack of love, and whether it's a lack of self-love, whether it's a lack of love from someone else, so whether it's abuse or violence, or some form of trauma, and we're left with this wound, right? So normally between the ages of 0 and 12, which are the most formative years for our brain development. And during that time, is when we really start to create a solid foundation for how life as a human works.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the
those
teenagers as well.
And all those subconscious beliefs as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's when, you know, most of the stuff that goes on under the surface of how we see the world, how we're expected to live, you know, all of that. Yeah, exactly. That happens, you know, in those really early years. So yes, it can happen after as well. So, like, I know some people don't develop addictions until their 20s, 30s, or even 40s. But lots of the time it actually can go back to, you know, well, how did you develop an addiction in your 40s? Because you're in a toxic relationship. Where did you learn that it was okay to be in a toxic relationship? Oh, because that was how your mother and father had a relationship, you know, for example. I'm just providing examples. And if there's any abuse, trauma, or anything like that, or any wound, you know, on the soul, or mind, or whatever, that is painful, that is never dealt with, it's still there. Like, if I you know, if you were to experience, I don't know, for example, say if I hit you on the arm right now, you know, virtually hit you on the arm right now, you're going to feel it, and it's going to leave. Maybe, I don't know, I won't hit you hard, but you'll feel it. You'll feel its impact. Just because in a week's time you can't feel that, you know, feel the hit that I just had on your arm because it was a week later, doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
Right.
So if something happened in childhood, just because it happened in childhood and you never dealt with it as an adult, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, and it doesn't mean that it didn't affect you. You probably just didn't have an outlet to express the pain, or you might not have had the words, or you might not have realized that that was actually painful. You just thought that's the way that things were.
Yeah.
And so, like, I always call this like this wound. It's like this, it can be anything. Like I just call it a wound. You can picture it like a hole within you. You can picture it as just like, all of your trauma and abuse in one spot. For me, it's always like just in my solar plexus area or in my heart. That's where I normally feel lots of wounds. And what happens is addictions, it's like you'll find something. So for example, food or alcohol, they're the ones that I'm most familiar with, or cigarettes, even smoking as well. You find something that all of a sudden makes that wound feel like it's not there, or it takes the edge off, or it makes you, so it normally shows itself in making you feel good.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's normally the opposite that you notice. So for me, like, it's always like, oh, well, I have a couple of drinks and it makes me feel really good. But I didn't realize that when I didn't have the drinks, I was feeling not good. Like that was just my normal state.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's why they're so dangerous, or so like sneaky, is because we feel like our natural state is our natural state, when in reality we're actually just covered with lots of wounds. So when we find something that removes that that invisible pain, which makes us feel good, we're like, oh, that felt really good, I'll do that again. Like I used to do that with alcohol, and I know a lot of people do. It's like, oh, well, I can't I can't go a day without drinking, or I can't socialize without drinking, because I feel really good when I'm drinking, and I don't want to socialize with people if I'm not drinking, because, well, that's not fun. Like that's often the mindset, because we don't realize the subconscious stuff, because it's subconscious. And so it's like, well, okay, well, that was easy, that was fun, that was good. And it normally starts out fine. Like, addictions never happen overnight. It's like this they grow, they develop over time, and the reliance becomes more and more and more and more. And normally, like, because it feels so good not being in that normal state, in which normal is actually just a pain state. And I know Eckhart Tolle calls it like the pain body. In that pain state, so we go, oh, actually that felt good, I'll keep doing more of that, I'll keep doing more of that, to try and get that next high, that next natural dopamine hit, right? Because our brain hasn't learned how to get that natural dopamine hit. It's always at that, I'm going to call it depressed state, not as in clinical depression, but it's depressed. And it's this need to seek this high, or this, it's the same thing as like people are addicted to their phones. You get a notification on Facebook, or you see your phone go ding. It's like, oh, someone loves me. Someone sent me a message. Like, oh my God, yay. So you're always checking your phone, but you can't put your phone down. You're on it until, late at night, and you can't sleep because you're on your phone, but why can't you give that love to yourself? And when we are whole, when we truly can give that love to ourselves, we don't rely on anything external to us to give us that feeling of, oh, someone loves me, because we go, oh my God, I love myself. Like, that's literally, I know this sounds really fucking cheesy, but honestly, like,
it's so true though. Even all the quotes you hear when we were younger, they sound so cheesy, but then the older I get, they like come back, they get like triggered. I'm like, oh, okay, make new friends. Yeah, keep the old. Yeah, sounds better. Yeah. And then like, just like so many little quotes, and even just like Nike, like, do it anyway. I'm like, yeah, do it anyway. I'm like, wait, I'm like a Nike quote, like,
just do it.
Like, if you love someone, set them free. If they come back, it's meant to be. Like, when you're a kid, you don't even understand that quote. And then when I get older, like now I'm like, oh yeah, all those like little cheesy things you heard in like school and primary school are like coming back, and you're like, oh wow, they do make sense now.
They actually mean something. Yeah, they were written for a reason. They became well known for a reason. But yeah, that's like there's that's the overview of how addictions are developed. Like, I try and keep it real, like explain it in layman's terms rather than going into the scientific words and stuff. So yeah.
Which is when you said like how like you're not looking for anything external to give you love. I always love using the term for like relationships and other people, because I feel like personally, this is just my opinion, I feel like the strongest addiction that anyone can have in life over food, over any sort of drug, over heroin, is actually other people. And
Yes.
being in a relationship with someone, I've definitely been through that myself, like being just so absorbed and so addicted to another person.
Wanting them to make you happy.
Totally. And just like obsession as well, I guess that ties into addiction, is just being obsessed and addicted to this person. And and you have, though, healthy addictions, like, so when it comes like to other people as well, that's something I always questioned when I had an addiction to someone and I knew like it wasn't a positive addiction necessarily. And then I wondered, like, okay, if I get over that addiction for that person who I was in a toxic relationship with, can I, and you hear it with other people, like people are so in love and they get married and they're like, oh, I couldn't go a day without you, baby. You're like, can that be, is there such thing as a healthy addiction, like being addicted to like avocado, or just like something that's not bad for your health?
And just on that, like when people say I can't go a day without you, that to me is so unhealthy. Like that, like when you're completely whole within yourself, and this is like, I would love to chat about the wholeness thing in a minute, but because I keep saying it, people listening might be like, but yeah, what does that actually mean?
Exactly.
And like for me, I always, I've been in relationships and placed my happiness on another person, and and it starts out so innocently, like you get attention from them, they make you feel, you feel good when they're around, so equals in your mind, they make me happy, as opposed to I am happy and I really love the way that they make me feel because they bring out amazing traits within me. But I could happily go 2 weeks without you because I'm so comfortable with myself. And this is what my husband and I do all the time. Like we do our own stuff all the time because I'm so comfortable by myself and he's so comfortable by himself. And we have such this respect and trust that, like there's no need for the other person. So with healthy addictions, that's like, I'm still answering that myself, to be honest, because like I'm gonna say no, because like that, having been through really toxic addictions, even like me, like now spirituality is probably the closest thing I have to an addiction, like meditation. Like I can't go a day without meditating, but it doesn't mean
and I hear a lot of people like, I can't go a day without yoga, and I'm like, me, I'm a yogi. I love yoga, I'm so passionate about it, but when I hear other people say that, I'm like, I can go a week without yoga. Like if I'm on holiday in a hot tropical country, like I was just in Hawaii and stuff, I'm like, I don't do yoga. Like if it's hot and I'm busy and I want to explore the country and do other things, I don't need to do yoga, and I don't miss it either. I'm not like, oh, I wish I could do yoga, I'm not feeling fulfilled, I'm not feeling the same. I'm like, no, I still feel great. And if I do yoga, I can still love it. It's not that I'm not passionate about yoga or I don't love it as much as you. It's just like, I can survive without it and I can be happy without it, and I can still be in touch with my body even though I don't do yoga for a day.
Yeah, and that's where I'd question, actually, what's your relationship with yourself? Because if people are saying I can't go a day without yoga, but actually the reason that they can't go a day is because they're like, I might put on weight, or I might, like, and actually that's an unhealthy relationship with themselves. So, if it's that they just love it so much and they're like, I just can't go a day without it because I love it so much because it brings me so much energy or it brings me so much joy. But if I can't do it for a day, shit's not going to hit the fan.
Exactly.
If I can't do it for a week, shit's going to hit the fan. Yeah.
And it's still an addiction. And then I'm agreeing with you that it's can't have a healthy addiction, because if there's anything that you're passionate about or that you feel that you need, but then without it, you're less happy or you're less whole, then that's not good. That's not a healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I see a lot of people as well is, especially when like, so for me, like I'm clairvoyant as well. And I didn't even know that when I was alcoholic, because I was just always so like either recovering or drunk that I had no idea that I was so in tune with spirit. And I see lots of people starting their spiritual journey and almost becoming addicted to the spiritual side of things in such an unhealthy way that I need to, or that's this again, I need to escape. Like I need to go visit my home planet, or I need to go visit my home star, because of course that's more natural. Some people are so in tune with spirit that feels more natural, but we're human. We're having this human experience. So remaining grounded, is
I
so
find
important.
I'm so glad you actually brought that up, because I feel like this is another topic, but a lot of people in the spiritual community, they haven't fully resolved their, past traumas or their addictive tendencies. And so what happens is they're getting into the spiritual community and they feel like they need to meditate every single morning, and if they don't, they're like, oh, I'll have a bad day if I don't meditate in the morning, which is a form of addiction. Or they start doing things like ayahuasca or all these like herbal drugs, and then they say like, oh, or even marijuana or something, and then they're like, oh, well, it's a natural plant, and ayahuasca is natural, and it's something people have been doing for years, so it's not a drug. And then it's kind of like this spiritual bypassing, like, oh, well, it's okay because I'm a spiritual person and it's part of my spirituality, or something like that.
It's the same energy of like, I love that, because you're like, oh, if I didn't meditate this morning, then I'm going to have a bad day. It's removing, like, and this is this is perfect, because I'm like, we need to talk about wholeness, like what that actually is. Because it's like, if you put your happiness, we'll call it happiness because that's easy. If you put your happiness in anything else, then that means that you're lacking that wholeness within yourself. So if you put your happiness in meditating, meditating is a beautiful, like, I'm going to say, like, when I meditate, I have beautiful experiences and it's awesome afterwards, but I don't actually know if I meditated yesterday, actually. Oh, I think I did when I was resting. And so sometimes instead of having a nap, I just meditate. But if you put your happiness in something else, that's literally removing your power, removing your own ability to realize that you are already whole. And this is like, in a nutshell, kind of what addiction is, right? It's like giving your power to something else. And the wholeness comes when you're totally in alignment with yourself. It's like, that balance of, I call it like, there's 4 pillars of, I call it wealth. So it's like 4 pillars of wealth. So you've got physical wealth or physical health, mental health, spiritual health, and then it flows, because when you've got a true balance of all those 3, it balances, and you also have financial wealth. Financial health, because all relationships external to you are a reflection of your relationship with yourself. And so that wholeness can be created from within. And when you realize you're literally the creator of your own life, and yes, like, and flow with the universe or God or source or whatever you want to call it, you are literally in control of everything that you, or the way that you experience everything, the way that you want to experience everything. And so that wholeness comes from realizing that there is nothing external to us that can make us feel truly, truly, truly happy that we can't create within ourselves.
I feel though, as well, I just want to add to that you can use other things as tools to get there, right? So of course, without becoming addicted, of course there are people who we get inspired from, and we're like, wow, you make me feel so alive and so good. How can I bring that emotion and bring those feelings up within myself when I'm not physically with you? Like, now that I've experienced that, now I know what it feels like. How can I get there without blank, without the meditation, without the daily yoga class, without, making love to my partner every day? How can I experience that high vibration and that positivity without relying on that one thing? So definitely,
and that's it's and that's like, this is for me, like, exercise is a huge thing. Like, I love just connecting with nature. So like, I'll go for a walk somewhere and I'll just literally just look at the trees. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but it's pretty cool when you stand outside and you just literally just observe a tree, okay, and you just look at, like, the way that it's growing, and you look at the branches of it, and then you look at the leaves, and it's just, I don't know, it blows my, I don't know if I'm if you've
No,
ever
no,
done that.
no, you're not
Like,
weird at all. What I do more than the visual is like, I like touching it. So like every now and then I'll just go up to a tree and I'll be like, okay, on the bottom it's mossy and it feels like this, and in the middle it's barky and it feels like this, and the twigs and the leaves feel like this, and I'm just like feeling every inch of the tree, like, wow, there's so many textures, and like sensing different energy from different plants, and I'm weird like that.
No, okay, that makes me feel heaps better.
So like we'll be in the forest and people see you just like staring at a tree, and I'll be there like just feeling it. And like, we're sober. Like, my husband, we're sober.
Yeah, we are, honestly, people probably, actually, I've been accused many times of like people asking like, what are you on? I want some of that. I'm like, I'm sober. This is literally just life.
Yeah, when I go to parties, if I go to parties these days, or if I'm out in town, people are like, because I'm never drinking, so they're like, what are you on? And I'm like, I am sober. And they're like, no, you're not. Like, tell me what you're on. I'm like, I am 100%. I'm just like,
I want some of what you got.
Yeah,
exactly. That's so true. And especially like when you realize what, like, of course I remember like having a couple of drinks and you'd feel really good.
Yeah.
And it's when I was learning to become sober, because I've been sober just over 3 years, and I was like, the first year it was really challenging. I never experienced that high that I would when I was, about 2 or 3 drinks in. And so that my journey has literally been about, okay, how can I create that? And now it's like, my husband and I will just go for a walk, and nature was my biggest teacher of how to live, to be honest. Like, I would go for a walk by myself in those early days and just connect with nature, look at the ocean, like look at the beauty everywhere surrounding us, focusing on like these incredible things that we so often miss, like, a butterfly, just like, I was just looking yesterday because it's what I do now, and there was like these 2 butterflies just flying past. I was like, how magical is that? Like, there's so much magic around that, but we forget to look for it. And when we do look for it, we find it everywhere.
Sorry, I just want to add as well, what I think it is as well is there's a difference, because I've heard that a lot before, and I didn't really understand it, and it sounded all woo-woo and cheesy to me, like, oh wow, look at the butterfly.
Same.
I'm like, I'm looking at it, nothing's happening, like, what are you guys on? But it's actually, I feel like it's connecting with something. So it's not just visually. Yes, you can visually look at something. Yes, you can tell someone words, but it's that like that full embodiment of looking at something and connecting with it. How is that butterfly feeling? Like, what has that butterfly been through? How, what does it feel like to flap your wings like that? And when you express your words to someone, like, are you truly, like, are you embodying everything you're saying? Are you connecting with that other person on that deep level? Like, everything's about connection. And I think our whole society as well, we're a bit numb. Like, we say things, but we don't really mean it. And we do things, like we're in a yoga class, but we're thinking about either like something we did yesterday or something that we need to do, in the afternoon, and we're not really present. It's just fully being present and being there, and taking off those facades and layers and becoming less numb, and really just becoming in touch with everything in life.
With everything. And with your, like, I think that starts with connecting. Like, for me, it's all about connection with self, connection with source, with the universe around you. But I think that nature, and you summed that up so well. It's like connecting with, for me, it was connecting with nature, and truly like feeling. It's almost like putting yourself in the thing that you're connecting with, shoes, or roots of the tree. What's that one? Nature.
I just said nature was such a huge one as for me as well. Such a powerful healing tool.
And it's like, it's talking about numb. Like, I was going for a walk the other day, and there's a big park, and I just had this urge to do cartwheels, like, through the park. There was a couple of people around, and I was like, I don't even care. I'm just going to do cartwheels. So I cartwheeled through the park, and that is because, like, I was like, I don't care if there's, this nearly 30-year-old woman just cartwheeling through the park. But honestly, it was just like, I feel like cartwheeling, and I was laughing, and it probably looked absolutely crazy. And do you know what? Even a year ago, I wouldn't have done that. But I'm like, I
Yeah.
honestly don't care what other people think anymore. And if cartwheeling through the park is what I feel like doing right now, I'm going to do that.
Exactly. If that's going to bring me joy, then
This
it's
will bring
nobody
me
else's
joy.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also giving permission to other people to, you know, when someone sees something like that, they can either go, okay, that's a bit strange,
Yeah.
or they go, oh, well, I want to do that, you know, like, oh,
Exactly.
what's stopping me from doing that? Oh, it's because other people are going to judge me and think I'm weird. And then there's the whole thing of, well, are you living in love or fear? You know,
Yeah.
fearing others'
Yeah, you'll get
judgment.
one response or the
Yeah.
other. You'll either get
Yeah.
people who are like, oh my God, that girl's so stupid, she's crazy and she must be on something. And then
Mm.
you get the other people who are like, oh my God, I wish I could be like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like every time I walk through a park, I go and stop and swing on the swings.
Yeah.
And this is literally like, I remember as a child trying so hard to be so grown up because of all the things I'd experienced.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I want to swing on a swing. Why can't I swing on a swing? I want to be a kid again. And it's like, it's fun. It's enjoyable. And it's not about, I think a lot of people go, oh, you let your inner child play and it seems really immature. But actually it's not. I don't think it's immature. It's truly just connection with your whole self.
You're in
And it's the
touch
whole
with
self
yourself.
thing.
I think as well, when you become in touch with yourself as an adult, you realize how much of a child you actually are. Like we are all like giant babies.
It's like there's so much, it's so much fun. And like for me, I used to be an absolute I'd be drunk and that was my outlet to be stupid because I was drunk, it was fine. Like but then I missed that fun that I used to have when I was drunk. And so I'm like, well, what's stopping me bringing silly stuff in now, just for the sake of it, just for fun. And we are big kids. It's very wise big kids. That's all it really is. Yeah.
And last question for the day is for people who are in addiction or they're realizing that they might have an addiction to something, how do you end an addiction without swapping it for something else? So I know a lot of times like people will quit smoking and then they'll become addicted to cigarettes, or they'll might even like quit something that's detrimental to their health, that's an addiction, and then swap it for something that's healthy and then convince themselves that they're not addicted to anything. So like someone might have been addicted to, drugs, and now they're addicted to their meditation or their ayahuasca, and without it, they're just like, they can't have that feeling of fulfillment or happiness without it. How do people like fully overcome an addiction?
Well, I've created a whole program on that. It's called Love Yourself Sober. It's called Love Yourself Sober. And it's because one thing that I started my business as sober coaching. And when I was sober coaching, I realized that I wasn't actually teaching people how to get sober. I was teaching them how to love themselves so that they didn't need anything else external to them. Because otherwise, there is a huge tendency to go from alcohol or drugs to food or to sugar. And I honestly say one thing at a time. And like throughout the process, and like this is what I teach in the program as well, is like throughout the process your brain is naturally going to reach for the next thing that's going to allow you to escape or to receive the same feeling. So when you have food, it's often a spike in dopamine as well, which is the same as when you have a couple of drinks. But it's all about actually what's the deeper stuff under the surface. So like the program's 30 days, so if anyone wants to join, feel free to get in touch with me.
I can put some things in the notes.
That'd be awesome. But in all honesty, and to keep it really short, it's about learning who you truly are, like discovering who you truly are, and healing all of the things that the addiction was rooted from in the first place. So that could be inner child healing. It could be like in the program, we do a lot of journaling, a lot of, looking at events from the past. We do a lot of forgiveness. We do a lot of gratitude. We do a lot of, discovering who we are without these things that we've relied on for most of our adult lives, for most of us. And so, but I think awareness is the first thing. Like if you're starting to think, okay, I've got an unhealthy relationship with something, whether it's a partner or whether it's, anything, awareness, and then literally answering the question, what are you going to do about it? Is it sharing it with someone? And I highly recommend being really honest and sharing it with someone. And yeah, and just literally just start creating like awareness around what is the actual reason as to why. And so often people say, oh, because it's fun.
Mm.
But then if it's getting you into trouble, is it really fun?
Yeah.
And that was my excuse with alcohol for years and years and years and years.
Right.
I was like, well, I like drinking. It's part of who I am. It's my identity.
Well,
And
anyone will
yeah.
create. I think everyone creates an excuse for what they're doing.
Oh my gosh, of
Everyone.
course. Of
So
course.
yeah,
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 exactly. It would be unnatural if you didn't. And if
yeah,
you had that awareness to start with, you probably wouldn't be dealing with an addiction. So
yeah,
yeah, so definitely awareness, tell someone about it, and then just decide what you're going to do. There's many like recovery programs out there, but I truly believe like no recovery program out there ever worked for me. Like I didn't resonate with lots of the rules or the cult like energy from lots of the things. So that's why I created my own path.
great.
Very intuitively guided, and I think that's most
I will
important.
put the links in the show notes. I definitely want people to
Yeah.
check out your work.
Awesome. Yeah.
And
But I truly honestly think everyone is in control of what it is that they want to do and going through their own healing journey.
for sure.
But also just knowing, like not beating yourself up, and just knowing that
Yeah,
wherever you're at, that feeling of like, oh my God, I don't want to go on like this. There's more to life.
yeah,
Listen to that feeling, because that is what will propel you into really truly living the life that you know you're capable of, and that you know the person that you can be when you remove the addiction. Just like that, the little inkling, that little
yeah.
deep inkling that so many of us have. Yeah.
And part of that, I just want to add to that as well, like how to overcome addiction is you need to have. It is going to be scary, but it's finding that courage to be vulnerable as well, because you need to be honest with yourself. And sometimes we're so addicted, or we feel that we need support outside of ourselves. Like if you're doing, if someone decides to do your course or a retreat or something like that, you have to be 100% honest with yourself and with other people. So you need to be willing to and have that courage to be vulnerable, but having that team support sometimes is what we need.
Oh
Like
yeah.
getting involved in these sort of things and not just doing it alone. I feel like
Yeah.
the success rate is probably so much higher for people
Yeah.
who share their story with other people, or have someone to
Yeah.
hold accountable if that's what they feel they need. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
just having that courage to be vulnerable as well, because it is a scary journey when you first admit
Yes.
to yourself is one thing, but then
Yeah.
admitting to others that you have an
Yeah.
addiction, a lot of people are embarrassed about that. So
Yeah, it's massive. And that's what, like, I've seen most of the women in the program that so far, like when I did it, I didn't know anyone who was sober, and so I literally, like, my husband was holding me accountable,
yeah,
and my mum as well, because she'd seen me in the hospital that night after ending, trying to end my life. And to go back on my word, I knew it would be completely upsetting them. So that was like, that I was very honest with them, and from that moment forward, I realized that the more honest I was received with so much love. And the courage is like, the courage keeps coming. It's just, it feels like you're stepping into the darkness, but what you realize is when you're in the darkness, there's so many beautiful lights around, and so many other people have experienced and been right where you are. And I think that is what got me through a lot of the time,
beautiful.
knowing that there are other people around the world going through exactly what you're going through, as lonely as it may feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, because we all feel that we're like the only one going through what we're going through, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just one more thing I also want to add on this for anyone who's listening who is wanting to overcome an addiction, is that you need to have compassion for yourself and not beat yourself up
Yeah.
for not getting over this addiction as soon as you thought you would, or if you've realized, if you've only just realized that you thought you've overcome an addiction, but then you've realized you've become addicted to something else and just swapped it in for something else. Just have compassion for yourself and an understanding for yourself, and also be patient, because addiction isn't something that you get rid of in a week. Addictions take time, and it's this journey and this process. So be gentle and be kind to yourself, and have patience, definitely.
Yeah, truly, truly. And it's what it's like, healing, loving yourself,
Totally.
I call it loving yourself sober, or loving yourself free from addiction, because
Yeah.
that's what it really is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Beautifully said.
Thank you
Beautifully
so
said.
much.
Thank you so much for having me, Aral. I've had so much fun chatting. It's yeah, and for everyone listening, it's yeah, been a real honor. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. I'll talk to you soon.
Great.
Bye.